All right. Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to our HR Best Practices webinar. I'm Sydney, and I'm going to go through some of our housekeeping items first. We welcome any question and ask that you enter those in the Q&A section. We have muted everyone during this session, so if you need anything, you can enter that into the Q&A section as well. We will be answering questions at the end of the webinar, so make sure you stay till the end so you don't miss out. This session will also be recorded today, and we will be sending an email with information on how to access it at any time. We do webinars each month, so be sure to sign up for our newsletter and our webinar email. I'm excited to introduce your two speakers today. We have Chrissy and Taylor. They both have extensive years of experience and know how to firsthand about how to navigate difficult employment issues and the importance of staying in compliance while still running your business. With that said, I'm turning y'all over to Taylor to get y'all started. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. And just for anyone here, we are HR Partners. We've been in business for over 24 years at this point. We're an HR consulting firm. We do payroll, we do benefits. And just like Sydney said, this is going to be the first of many. So feel free to use that Q&A session as well to give us suggestions on further topics that you're interested in seeing going forward. All right, and I'm going to turn off my video as we go through, but I'll catch you on the other side, friends. All right, and so today we're going to be touching on a lot of topics, as you'll see here. Usually in these webinars going forward, we're going to take one or two topics and go into it a more deep dive, but today we're looking to just kind of touch on a lot of different things, give you all an idea of what's to come and what you can expect from the future. This webinar in particular is making sure that we kind of bring forward the pain points that we've seen with our clients, changes that have been made recently, and just things that, you know, might have gotten people in trouble, and we want to make sure that, you know, these are kind of best practices for you to keep in mind as you go through the day. And so number one is starting with your policies. First of all, HR is an ever-changing field. There's always updates. There's always new information available to you. And so we want to make sure that we're considering all sides of the story. So don't forget about your remote employees. Don't forget about all of the different state laws that might be in place as well. And those check-ins are important. It's always important to make sure, you know, you're attending webinars like this and you're doing the research and you're reaching out for to professionals for help to make sure that everything is up to date and compliant. And then, of course, when we do make any of those changes, we want to make sure that we're also getting this out and notifying our employees and everyone's aware of these changes at that point in time. And so the first one that we're going to touch on today is background checks. And background checks are certainly something that we recommend, especially for risk mitigation. And there are some just kind of guidelines that go along with the background checks. You want to make sure that these are listed in the job ads and in the offer letters. Your offer letter should read that this employment is contingent upon successful completion of a pre-hire background screening and drug screening as applicable. So definitely something we want to bring up in the interview process as well. We want to make sure that this background check does not hit anyone as a surprise whatsoever. And of course, we want to consider when we're choosing you know, which items that we're screening for, whether we're just doing the social, we're looking at state, we're looking at MVR, credit reports. We want to make sure that we're considering the environment and the actual job requirements to where it's actually relevant. And we want to make sure that we keep one standard across the board. So if we are pulling MVRs and we have a hard stop if you have above 6 points, you know, we've declined employment before if you had 6 points, but we really like Jim coming in right now. You know, that's something that opens the door for discrimination. So we just want to make sure that we're remaining consistent across the board there. And So if we hire 2 people, again, for the same role, we just want to make sure that the checks read consistently across the same. So we're asking the same things of each accountant that we're hiring there at the same time. Further, these background reports should certainly have written acceptance, and a signed waiver is necessary. Some states require extra forms as well to go along with the main ones. So that's going to be, actually, Georgia is one of those states. So always something to make sure that you're keeping in compliance and taking in is always those state-specific laws that, we want to keep in mind. And so the steps essentially are, if you're looking to take this background information and reject a candidate going forward, they would be to notify the applicant, provide a copy of the background report, and we must allow the applicant the opportunity to dispute the report, because I think we've all could encounter a point in time that something's on a report that's just simply not accurate. So we want to assume and we want to make sure that these individuals have an opportunity to address these issues as well. All right, so let's break that down. And we want to make sure that we're using caution if we're looking to rescind an offer. There's different steps that make sure that everything's covered and that you don't ever have to worry about, going back and revisiting this again in the future. So the pre-adverse notice is going to be the first notice that states the reason that you're looking to actually rescind the offer. So it's saying that, hey, you have 6 points on your MVR record. I'm sorry, but this is, concerning to us. Here's a copy of the MVR. You have 5 business days to respond with a dispute at that point in time. And so even if you see something and it's on the report and it's kind of worrisome and you think, well, maybe they would be able to talk themselves out of this. Maybe if I just want to have a conversation with them and discuss what the circumstances might be surrounding this. Well, the pre-adverse notice is still the correct first step, because this allows, you to let them know, hey, this is something that's concerning, and then you can speak with them. But by then, we've already addressed that it's concerning, so we know that we have all of our bases covered at that point. And then on the other side, if they don't respond within the 5 business days, or if that conversation, just doesn't quite cut it, then part 2 would be the adverse action notice. And another copy of the background report so that they can carry that forward. So we just want to make sure, as well, that during these conversations, if you are looking to speak with the employee one-on-one, it's best to do with an HR representative. Best to remember not to make any promises or anything, just get to the facts of the matter, because we have, a lot of EEOC starts from the very first time that you speak to these individuals, to these candidates. So just a lot of things to dance around and think about when we're having these conversations. So highly advise just to get some advice going into that as well. And further, when all this is happening, your hire date may be coming up, but it's okay as long as we have that contingency in the offer letter. Then you can move back the hire date, and that, and that works out as well. And of course, if they do come back and dispute the report, then the HR team and the background company work together to get that figured out. So a lot of different steps there, but just something to keep in mind as far as these background reports, because they are recommended to make sure that you're getting the full story.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about deductions from wages, and in particular to the state of Georgia. Georgia does not have any laws identifying what voluntary deductions may be made from employees' paychecks, nor does it specifically require employees to provide written consent prior to any deduction. But such a document is often needed to prove that the deduction was authorized by the worker. You don't want to get into a situation where voluntary deductions were taken, a verbal agreement was made, and then the employee comes back and states that they were never informed. It's always best to get it in writing to protect your company. So common mandatory and voluntary deductions are listed on the screen for you. Some of the mandatory ones are payroll taxes and other legally required deductions, court-ordered garnishments as well. You do have voluntary deductions, many that you might be familiar with as far as medical benefits, meals, lodging, and other facility deductions as well. One particular area are work required items. So that might be uniforms, uniform cleaning costs, required tools for employment. It should be disclosed to the employee upon hire that those items would be deducted from their wages. And you should have it detailed in writing, and they need to sign that acknowledgement as well. You don't want to get into a he said, she said situation. And union environments are also different as well. They generally prohibit deducting from wages unless you have the employee's written authorization. And so that might be union dues. In the state of Georgia, we don't see as many unions. However, that is something that you do need to be aware of. So the Fair Labor Standards Act on uniform deductions, if the employer requires the employee to bear the cost, it may not reduce the employee's wages below $7.25 per hour. And that is the minimum wage standard in Georgia. And the cost cannot cut into overtime compensation required by the act as well. So the wearing of a uniform is required if it's required by law, the nature of a business, or by an employer. The cost and maintenance of the uniform is considered to be a business expense by the employer. However, the employer may require the employee to bear the cost. So final paycheck requirements in the state of Georgia. Georgia does not address it, but we recommend considering. If the employee provides 2 to 3 weeks notice, consider paying out a portion of their unused and accrued PTO. Using care if you reject an employee's resignation period. You want to avoid somebody quitting without notice, and we recommend a policy where if they give you 2 to 3 weeks notice, that you pay out a portion of their time. If the employee offers 2 weeks, you say go today, and then we no longer need your services, and you decide not to pay for 2 weeks. It could be argued that you term them for resigning. The safest option is to pay through the notice period, even if you don't want them to work. Be aware also where your employees are working. There are different laws in different states based on the final paycheck, and if they have to have, say, sick time or PTO paid out. The next, we're going to get into OSHA as well. So OSHA does have a proposed rule right now called Improved Tracking of Workplace Injuries and Illnesses. Establishments with 20 or more employees in certain high hazard industries will continue to electronically submit Form 300A once a year. However, in addition, the requirements of this rule with 100 or more employees in designated industries to submit the data electronically once a year on OSHA's Form 300 log and Form 301 incident report and injury illness records. The improved tracking of workplace injuries and illness would update the agency's classification systems for determining the industries covered by the submission requirements. A final rule is scheduled for this month. We did check on it, and we do not have that final ruling in. So that's something that we're waiting on. They're also changing over to a new system for next year as well, using login.gov. So it is highly recommended that you guys go and create an account before January 1st. OSHA is also looking to increase inspections at trenching and excavation sites. So they're really going to crack down on this as well. Compliance officers will perform more than 1,000 trench inspections. They could include stopping by and inspecting any excavation site during their daily duties. So OSHA is also expanding the criteria criteria for its severe violator enforcement program. The greatest risk is being cited for 2 repeat violations at one site. And if this happens, you would want to start fighting any little citations. Otherwise, the multiple citations will add up. And so for the SVEP consequences, there will be follow-up inspections, publicly listed as a violator while in the program, and for large companies, warning letters to top company officers. And there would also be OSHA press releases about the severe violations. So OSHA has adopted this new version of the Severe Violator Enforcement Program because it believes that enforcement against employers that repeatedly disregard the safety and health of their workforce should require additional OSHA efforts.
Great. And another way to get a discount on workers' compensation here is going to be the Georgia Drug-Free Workplace Program. So this is something, again, that a lot of this is going to be related to risk. And we want to make sure that this is something that you relay is important to your employees as a company. And something that works out for you on the other side, because it does create that safer work environment, and it does allow you to get discounts, and it involves training, actually. So you'll get one training session for your employees, you'll get one for management, you'll get a certificate, and then you turn that into your workers' comp agency. This is something you do every year, and it's something that is an excellent yearly reminder of something that's part of your company culture, and it demonstrates that you're putting safety first as well. Georgia does currently have a Georgia medical marijuana law in place. And so we just kind of want to clarify here that it is still okay for you to have in your processes, in your policies, that you do not accommodate the use, consumption, possession, transfer, display, transportation, or growing of marijuana in any form. So you can certainly still have a written zero tolerance policy, and that can still relate to on duty and off duty as well. So it would still, you could still do the random drug testing if that's part of your company policy as well. And marijuana would count towards that. So just something to keep in mind. I know that the medical marijuana laws are definitely changing across the United States right now. Further, we have voting leave, and I know that we just had this come up, and I'm sure it'll be back. So we have here the Georgia laws in particular. They require that private employers grant employees time off to vote. So employers are required to provide up to 2 hours of leave to vote. Employers are not required to provide time off to vote if an employee has at least 2 hours of non-working time during the time the polls are open. So if you have that 2-hour block on the other side, you're not required to give that time. However, if you don't have that 2-hour block, the employer may specify the time during which an employee may take that leave. And the employees should definitely still provide reasonable notice to their employers of their intention to take that time off to vote. Georgia at this point in time does not specify whether it must be paid or not. It just must be provided. But still, just make sure we're taking federal laws into concern as well. And next, we have the lactation break law. So this is Georgia passed HB 1090. And so it requires employers to provide employees with a paid break period of reasonable duration to express breast milk. So the break must be provided at the employee's work site and during work hours. Employees must be able to express breast milk in a location that provides privacy that is also not a restroom. And the break period must be compensated at the employee's regular rate of compensation. And they cannot require salaried employees to use paid leave to offset these breaks, nor reduce salaried employees' compensation for using these breaks. So these are the Georgia specific rules in regards to this HB 1090. It does largely overlap with the existing federal laws. The only differences are that Georgia applies to all employees, not just non-exempt employees, and Georgia does require the break to be paid, and federal law puts a 1-year time limit on these breaks, but Georgia does not. So again, just something to make sure we're considering there. There are going to be some exceptions if there is an undue hardship and your company is under 50 employees, if allowing these breaks would cause significant difficulty or expense, but we would highly recommend consulting legal counsel before moving forward with anything like that, and definitely making sure that we're keeping this law in mind. And so as far as what you should do with this information is, we just want to make sure, you know, this is something you're looking over in your handbook and making sure that you're compliant there. And we want to make sure that your supervisors are aware and able to manage a request when this were to come up in the future. And then next we have smoking and tobacco use in the workplace in Georgia. So there are many no smoking requirements. I feel like, you know, there's a lot of us here who actually remember being able to smoke in a restaurant back in the day. So employers are now required to prohibit smoking in enclosed areas of places of employment, including work areas. And so any enclosed buildings or public facilities are going to be part of this, and it is going to be the responsibility of the employer to ensure that current and prospective employees are aware of the ban on smoking in the workplace. So this is something that should be on your bulletin board in an obvious and conspicuous place, you know, next to your labor posters, items like that. And definitely want to designate the smoking and non-smoking areas. And there are a lot of different parameters around what the signs can say, where the signs can be placed. We just want to make sure that everything is defined thoroughly and the borders are defined thoroughly. So if we had any questions about the signs, that's something definitely we could follow up on, but just know that there are definitely some rules that go along with that.
Next, we're going to talk about compensation. So for 2023, salary budgets projected to stay at a 20-year high, but will actually trail inflation. So salary increases are projected to grow on average over 4% for 2023. It is less than half of the current inflation rate of 8.5%. And on the next slide, you'll also see the budget survey as well that also shows you those numbers. Another point to note is compensation levels rise as the unemployment rate falls. There's more competition out there for talent, and individuals in the workplace have their pick of job opportunities now. We actually have 3.4 million fewer Americans working compared to pre-pandemic numbers from February 2020. Plus, in 2021, we have actually added 3.8 million jobs. Unemployment rates in the U.S. have hovered around 3.5 and 3.7% since 2021. And surprisingly, the Georgia unemployment rate is at an unprecedented rate of 2.9%. This is the lowest rate that Georgia has had in over 20 years. So understanding this, it is important to position your company to be competitive in compensation and also total benefit packages to attract and retain employees. And part of that is benefits. So you need to remember to review your benefit offering each year, and working with a broker who will assist you with that and quote it every year as well. Things have changed recently, and many plan designs with carriers like UHC, Aetna, Kaiser, and Cigna. So those are definitely companies that you want to look at benefits. Level funded health plans or partially self-funded plans are a great option for small business. And many carriers offer wellness programs with participation incentives. And those incentives can include sports equipment, gift cards, lower benefit premiums for participants, and if applicable, additional funds posted to the employee's HSA account. So the idea of that wellness program is that overall you can potentially decrease your benefit premiums. And so you also want to look at when looking at your benefits, look to include mental health support or an EAP, which is an employment assistance program. Employment assistance programs are great. They can offer 3 opportunities for employees to be able to call and get mental health support. So employees also value health, vision, and dental insurance above all other benefits. We recommend that you actually survey your employees to find out what they truly value. That's something that we do for our clients to see what their employees value. Evaluate your employer contribution as well. A small increase in contribution could offset replacing employees. And as mentioned before, with the low employment rate, that means finding quality employees is difficult. Creating a richer contribution structure will help to ensure that your company keeps the current employees, which is cheaper than the cost of lost production due to losing an employee, or finding a replacement, onboarding, and training new employees. And actually, we are going to have more information on that. We have an employee retention webinar on January 12th, so make sure to look out for that as well. And so you do want to offer those benefits that, that entice employees to stay, and add ancillary benefits like life insurance, short-term disability, and long-term disability. Those are great benefits with relatively small cost to enhance your program. Be more competitive and offer those as a company paid benefit. And to that note, unfortunately, we recently had an employee pass away with one of our clients. It was a tough situation because the employer did not offer employer paid life insurance. And so even offering a $10,000 employer paid life insurance would have assisted in paying funeral expenses. So it's definitely something we recommend you looking at. Remote versus in-office environment. As you guys well know, COVID has really changed many things for us, and it has really created a different environment where you're starting to see a lot of employees working remotely. And it can affect company culture, productivity, and turnover as well, as those employees are looking for more remote or hybrid work. And so if moving an employee to or from a home office environment, ensure that tax profiles are up to date on the change to avoid negative tax implications. And that is something that we've had to look at for our clients, for the fact that those employees may have been reporting in the state of Georgia, and now they're working remotely, maybe even in California. And California's tax rules and laws are much different than Georgia, and those are something that you have to be aware of as well. One thing that you could consider is a hybrid model, if that might work for you as well, where employees are in the office maybe so many days a week, and maybe working remotely maybe 1 or 2 days a week. Again, being careful to make sure that you are paying attention to any employment laws if the employee is not in the state of Georgia. And, you know, since the pandemic has changed the way that we do business, remote and hybrid work is actually here to stay. Many employees and potential employees look for work that has remote or hybrid work options available. And in 2022, a benchmark survey of companies who responded, 39% are mostly in person, 22% are mostly remote, and 39% are hybrid. So it's definitely something to look at and consider. We all do want to ask if you guys happen to have any questions, please use the question button on the bottom.
Back. So we do have a few questions. Might go ahead and start out asking Christy and Taylor. So our first question is, someone asks, I have an employee suspected of theft. Can I run a background check without telling them?
So yeah, unfortunately not. So that is going to be something that you're looking at now, and you're trying to look to their past. But the most important thing here is going to be what evidence that you have at hand. And for all background reports, we do have to have that signed consent. Again, with the EEOC from that very beginning of the hiring process, we want to make sure we're mentioning it as many places as possible. It's in the offer letter. It's thoroughly known to them, and they do sign off.
All right, awesome. Our next question is, does voting leave apply to remote employees also?
It does, actually. So that's going to be the same thing as long as your hours are defined as a remote worker. And we have that is all has to do with that 2-hour gap on the other side. So if that 2-hour exists outside of your normal working hours, then that is still going to apply where the work is being done.
All right, awesome. And then another one, how soon do I have to get the final checkout to an employee that I've terminated?
I'll take that one. With that, you do need to make sure that you pay out those employees who have terminated within the first available paycheck after their termination date. So sometimes that means you have to scramble to put things together, but in the state of Georgia, you need to pay it out as soon as possible. If you have employees in other states, you do need to be aware of their rules. Like we've stated before during the webinar, you may have to pay out possibly sick time or any earned PTO based on handbooks and what's stated in the handbook. So that's something definitely that you want to make sure you pay particular attention to.
And then our second to last one. So if I already have an account with OSHA, do I still have to go to login.gov?
Yes, you do. That is something that's coming in on January 1st. So going in and creating that login.gov, they're trying to make more of a streamlined process for everybody. So it's highly recommended. And we do have information on that as well. So we can provide that at the end of the webinar as well and send it out to you guys.
And then we have another one regarding the smoking requirements. Someone asked, how does vaping work with non-smoking requirements?
Oh yeah, it definitely runs one and the same. It's going to be the same exact considerations. And even in some work environments, just due to it being an electronic device, would even make it more unsafe under certain situations. So we would definitely look at vaping the same exact way we would look at cigarettes and cigars, and kind of just lump it all into the same category as far as all of these rules with being inside. They would need to go to the same designated spaces.
All right. And then do you know what the salary budget increases are in the state of Georgia?
No, for this webinar, we did pull national, but we can pull that information together for you and be able to provide it to you at the end of this webinar.
All right. I think that's all our questions.
All right, well, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We'll leave the Q&A open just for a bit longer as well if you have some suggestions to give us for our next webinars. Next week, we're going to have a workers' comp and OSHA injury reporting So that's going to be next Thursday, and we're going to do, like we said, just kind of a deeper dive into those two topics. This one's touching a lot today, so I know we threw a lot at you. Definitely feel free to reach out to the emails here, Taylor St. Clair, Chrissy Davis. You can give us a call at the 770-248-0401, and anyone at the office would be happy to answer your questions or get you to where you need to be. And like Chrissy said as well, we have the employee retention and turnover coming up in early January too for the start of the year. And we do make these available to you after, in case you know someone who wasn't able to make it today, or in case this is something that you'd like to share, and we'll make that the OSHA information available to you as well. Just kind of gives you a walkthrough of signing up and everything. And thank you all very much for coming. It's been an absolute treat, and we have many more webinars for you all.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for coming, and we hope to see you at the next one.